Good afternoon, Bills Mafia. This is Bills Squad. Jeremy White, Jerry Ostrowski, Joe Marino talking with you for an hour of Bills roundtable discussion. We've got lots to get to today. We're going to get to the newest Buffalo Bill, Elijah Moore, wide receiver, and how he fits into this offense, the wide receiver room in general, because there are a lot of mouths to feed, and everybody eats, of course. How that room plays in, special team snaps, defensive line pairings, something Joe's been wanting to get into with Jerry as well. We'll do that. We've got a new quote from Brandon Beane on James Cook, and we'll check in on the division as well and whatever else comes up. So stick with us. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. So good afternoon. We were a few seconds late because Jerry was telling some good stories, and I think we can look forward to some stories as we go. You know, we hit the draft, we'll hit the schedule, and as we get into the months preparing for the season, looking back on Bills eras bygone, Tom Donahoe, Greg Williams, memories. Some good, some bad for Bills fans, right? But memories just the same.
Yeah, you're assuming that I want to tell all of those.
Well, some. Maybe we'll get some. Maybe we'll get some.
You can find those at the Substack, Herd Mentality.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that I'm pretty good at marketing. No, man, yeah, we got a lot of stories, man. You've been in the league for 10 years. There's all kinds of stuff going on. But I apologize. I'm not in my normal studio. I am up in Cedar Falls, Iowa, home of the great Spencer Brown. I am at Northern Iowa up here with my boys getting ready to enjoy a football golf tournament and a little spring ball, their last final game, practice today. So I'm geeking out on the college football scene this weekend. I'm enjoying it.
Very good. You and I, Jerry, are subscribers to the Herd Mentality Substack. And for those of you that are, when Joe puts that out, you sent out some clips. You've let everybody know what Elijah Moore can do. And that's probably where we want to start today, right? It's been a week talking about receiver quite a bit. And Elijah Moore is a name that came up before the draft, and Brandon Beane had said that they had talked to him. And I think this is a universally thought of as a good idea, guys. And I think it's a level much higher than your Chase Claypools and your KJ Hamler ideas. Like they've lived in this bargain bin. And I think this one has the potential to be maybe the nicest find in that bargain bin.
Well, no good deed ever goes unpunished. I went through and got my podcast ready to go early for today. And, of course, that was just an hour or so before the signing of Elijah Moore came through. And so I figured, you know what? We'll go ahead and run the pod. We'll talk to Jerry and Jeremy on Bill Squad, and we'll talk about this Elijah Moore signing. And so here we are. First time I get a chance to share some thoughts on this. After the Bills didn't draft the receiver until the 7th round, I actively found myself rooting for Elijah Moore to be the player that the Bills bring in. And I love the skill set. 5'10", 180 pounds. Just turned 25 years old in March. You know, this is a young player, high second-round pick back in 2021. And, of course, maybe the career production hasn't quite met the expectations. He was targeted over 100 times each of the last 2 seasons by Cleveland. But look at the quarterbacks this guy's played with throughout his career. It hasn't really been conducive to being productive. In fact, among receivers last year with 75 or more targets, he had the 5th worst rate in terms of catchable balls. Over almost 30% of the passes thrown his way were not catchable. So that'll reconcile some of the questions maybe people have about production. I also want to go ahead and squash one thing. This is not a slot only. He is not a slot only. In fact, most of his NFL career snaps have come in wide alignments. And in the film review that I posted a few hours ago in the Herd Mentality Substack, I was intentional about showing clip after clip after clip of him playing on the outside, him beating press coverage, and showing that he's not a slot only. So don't profile him that way. I think that would be inappropriate. And so what this guy brings to the Bills offense is route running. It's more route running and speed down the field. And because he can push vertical with that 4.35 speed, it really opens up a lot for him, breaking off routes, working the deep outs, working comebacks. And he's got ball skills and ball tracking down the field. So there's an overall profile that I really like that I think has been missing from this receiver core. And I think with him and Josh Palmer, the Bills have 2 guys now that really elevate the route running and separation ability of this receiver core compared to last year. And what I especially like about the profile for Elijah Moore is this is kind of the type of receiver that Josh Allen's had the most success throwing the ball to. I think there's like a hunger for the big body, contested catches, leverage battle winner. But who has he been the most successful throwing it to? It's Diggs, It's Beasley, it's Brown, it's Sanders, it's Shakir. And I think this gives Isaiah McKenzie as well. You could kind of throw him into that group as well, where this profile really kind of works with Josh Allen, and I'm excited to see this skill set arrive.
It's funny you brought that up because that's what the comment I was going to make. The thing that I really like about this signing is the fact that his skill set, and I also commend you for stressing the fact he is not a slot only. I think that we get too caught up in this, and I've said this a million times. I hate the term wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2. You're only a slot. You're only an X. Man, everybody in this day and age in football, everybody's got to know how to do everything. And I think the reason why Josh does well with these types of receivers is a lot of times he's an off-schedule quarterback, right? He's going to move in the pocket. He's going to elude people. He's going to make big throws downfield with his arm, does amazing things. That's why he's so comfortable, I think, with Shakir, because Shakir is able to get open in tight windows and find space, and he hits them. And I think Moore does the same thing. And now you've got it's funny, you got levels where Shakir can just kill it underneath. You got Moore deeper and over top. You got another option on the scramble stuff. I think he fits really, really well. I think he's going to thrive here, to be honest with you, because of what you said. I think that Josh does really well with these kinds of guys that can ad-lib a little bit and stay with them as he's throwing off schedule.
When we talked before the draft about thinking they might get a receiver somewhere, like what kind of guy was right, we thought field stretcher, and whether that was over the top or whatever. Joe, you asked me, this is a guy that I like. I like separators. I like the guys that just get open, and inside and outside is important. For Moore, the question I want to ask for you guys is, there are a bunch of different routes receivers can run, and not every receiver runs the same routes with the same success. And what Moore is apparently good at, digs, curls, outs, comebacks. I've read about a lot about how he's a route technician. And to me, that's the stuff that gets me excited about anybody that ever joins this team. Some guys are going to win with size. Some guys are going to win by being bullies. And then there's guys like this. And to me, the technician, that jumps out at me. And I want to ask you how those kinds of routes, how do they fit into this offense? Are they the perfect kind of fit for what Joe Brady does?
One thing that really pops when watching Elijah Moore is his ability to run that deep out and, 10, 15 yards of depth, outbreaking pattern to the sideline. And a lot of times it's a pretty tight window because there's not a lot of space between, if he's lined up on the numbers or the red line, you got to be able to manufacture that space to give the quarterback a window there between the sideline and you. And I love his ability to push vertical and very suddenly work those horizontal breaks. Like that's the jackpot of receivers. When you can run the horizontal route tree, you got something. Everyone can run the linear stuff, right? Vertical seam routes, those types of things. But if you can work the horizontal route tree, that's where you can really stress coverage because it's difficult for guys to be able to plant and drive if you have separation quickness and that ability to get in and out of breaks with suddenness. And Moore has that. And it blends well with that ability to, just win with speed vertically. And so I think when you watch him play and the quarterback play was pretty erratic in Cleveland, but there's a lot of moments where he is able to create those windows that are kind of tight along the sideline with those outbreaking patterns. When you have a quarterback like Josh Allen with the arm talent that he has that can fit it in there, that's a dangerous part of the field if you can attack that with consistency. And he's also very good with his release package to be able to, he's not going to bully through contact, but because he is shifty, he's able to move those corners and create some false steps, which allows him to get into his route stem. And there's a lot of nuance in the route stems to be able to bend and work so that he can get himself in a position where he can get even and then separate. And so I think route technician Jeremy is a great way to call it. And I think the whole route tree is available to him, which creates a lot of exciting opportunities for Joe Brady to draw this thing up.
Exactly. I think one thing we don't really have in our repertoire is kind of that deep crossing route, that stuff that takes a little bit of time to develop, the stuff that Worthy runs, that Tyreek Hill runs, where you're going to go all the way across the field. And I think adding a guy like Moore is now all of a sudden you can really physically and truly attack three levels of the passing game. You've got your short, your intermediate, which we've always been very good at short and intermediate. Now you got a third level that has to be defended and just more stress on the defense. I think he brings that to the table for the Bills. I think he's a veteran that understands things. Obviously, you just talked about his route running, but in all actuality, I think he just opens up a lot more and will take pressure off of other guys trying to do things that they're not very good at.
When you're building out this receiver core, without doing wide receiver 1, 2, 3, like we know Shakir is very high up on the hierarchy. He's going to get his touches. They manufacture touches for him. Is this a battle for receiver 4, 5? Does Moore have a chance to be a pretty big contributor? He's had back-to-back 100 target seasons, and I don't anticipate him getting 100 here, but I do subscribe to the idea that targets are earned. And if he comes here, how high can he go? How far into this can he progress? Because if you lay out that's the kind of receiver Josh Allen usually finds chemistry with, if that happens early, then I'm going to start buying stock in Elijah Moore as a part of this offense.
Yeah, figuring out this target distribution is pretty challenging puzzle to put together, and I think that's a good thing. And I think it feeds into the style of offense that the Bills want to be able to run. They want to be able to use a lot of different skill sets and challenge you with a lot of different players. And so whatever you want to key in, the Bills should have some good counters at their disposal. I think one thing we're going to have to reconcile with the Bills offense in general, as it's currently constructed with Joe Brady as the coordinator, is that it's going to be difficult for us to have conversations and validate how good a player is by production metrics, which is it's a big shift, because normally you say, oh, this guy had 90 catches and 1,100 yards and 8 touchdowns, and he's really good because of that. It's going to be difficult to point to that for any one receiver. I mean, the Bills had Khalil Shakir with 800 something yards, and then Coleman with 580 something, and the next guy's 450, and that's not exciting, but that was the receiving production for the NFL MVP last year. And so I think the Bills could have a bunch of 40 to 60 target guys. I think it'll lean into Shakir. I think that's always going to be a security blanket for Josh Allen, but I'm really fascinated to see if there is a clear pecking order beyond that where you see separation in target distribution, because I really do think there could just be a bunch of guys that come in that 40 to 60 range, as opposed to this is the 120 guy, this is the 100, this is the 90. I think it's going to be Shakir, and then everyone else is going to kind of fall in line pretty close.
Which is probably the only thing that makes me a little bit nervous about this, knowing his history and knowing how he kind of helped himself get out of New York. Wasn't happy with how much he got the ball there, then went to Cleveland. Obviously, another situation where the quarterback play was not very good. I would have to think coming into Buffalo, playing for an elite quarterback in with an elite franchise and an elite city of support, all of a sudden winning fixes a lot of things. And if he can get used to the fact that that ball is going to be distributed and understand he's going to have his moments, I think this will be a really good marriage. I think he's got the talent to help us and what we need. Hopefully those things come true, and we're talking about what a success his signing was by the end of the season.
Jared, that has to be part of what Elijah Moore knows he's signing up for. Like, if he thought he was coming to Buffalo after the draft on this 1-year deal worth up to $5 million to come and get 100 targets, I think he's lying to himself. And I'm sure those expectations are clearly communicated to Josh Allen. And really his first, from the facility press conference for this year, when they open up the voluntary workouts, he's got an everybody eats hat, right? Like, they are doubling down on this. Nobody's coming to Buffalo because you think you're going to get the ball at a high clip. And I think that's clearly an expectation I hope has been communicated to Elijah Moore. And certainly he had to examine the situation and think to himself, man, I've been playing with these Jets quarterbacks and these Browns quarterbacks, and maybe I'm not going to get 90 or 100 targets, but at least Josh Allen's throwing me the football.
Well, to that point, sorry, Joe, the quarterbacks to start 3 games with Elijah Moore, it's Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco, PJ Walker, Zach Wilson, Mike White, Deshaun Watson, and Dorian Thompson-Robinson. And, there's some guys in there that have thrown the ball. Jameis has had some success, but obviously Josh Allen's a step up from anybody. And that's what I was going to get to, is when you look at him, did you see him getting open and the rest of it just not coming together for him? Because I always want to defend receivers a little bit, because that's part of the game. I can do my job, but if things break down before it gets to me, then I did my job for nothing. And that's got to be a mental thing that a guy's got to be able to commit and work like that. But if the passing games he was a part of, that there somewhere along the way, things didn't go very well, whether it's the line, the quarterback, and the Bills have the infrastructure to probably avoid a lot of those problems.
The last few reps of the film reel that I put together for the Herd Mentality Substack were intentionally look at how bad these quarterbacks are, where the guy is wide open, not even hard NFL throws, nobody near him, and these balls are airmailed. So it hasn't been a volume issue for Elijah Moore. It's been, can we get catchable balls? And there's so much empty production that's left out on the field because the ball's not in the zip code and the guy's wide open.
The thing that's pretty evident to me anyway, when you look at this, it's almost like word has gotten out that Buffalo is the place for guys that are veterans that are trying to kind of re-kickstart their careers to finish their careers strong, are gravitating to Orchard Park and coming to Buffalo. You look at Bosa, it takes less money to come to Buffalo. You look at Moore coming to Buffalo. And these are all guys on 1-year deals. And they, when Edwards showed up, same type of deal. You can go down the list. And I think the word is out. Obviously, you've got a great franchise and an unbelievable quarterback and a culture that's there. What better way for a guy to come in, and whether they decide that, hey, I'm here and I want to stay, or they want to try to go somewhere else, like Mack Hollins, who comes in and just completely resurrects his career, now makes big money up in New England. I think that Buffalo's got word is out that this is a place for vets that can come. It's vet friendly. And if you do what you're supposed to do, you're going to get treated really, really well, put a good product out there on film, and possibly either A, parlay it into another good contract with the Bills, or move on to another franchise and have a good contract there. So I think that's something to say about this franchise right now. It's pretty obvious, even with some of these NFLPA rankings that come out and say that the Bills stuff isn't quite as good, and you still got top name guys that want to be here. And that says a lot for this team and this franchise.
When we return, we'll get into the evolution of the offense. Joe Brady returning again. He'll have head coaching looks again. The MVP, a repeat season, the changes in the receiver core, the draft as well. We'll get to the next evolution of the offense, and still to come, defensive line pairings, what the Bills can do in that department as well. It's all coming up on Bills Squad. Did you know your Fire TV is also an Xbox? Turn any TV into your gaming and entertainment hub with Fire TV Stick 4K services. No console required. Just grab your paired controller, subscribe, or sign into Xbox Game Pass Ultimate with EA Play included, and you're ready to go. Dive into hundreds of premium titles, including EA Sports, College Football 25 to Call of Duty, as easily as you stream your favorite shows. How do you game when you're not in front of your main setup? Hotel stays, family visits, even just in your bedroom. Fire TV Stick 4K makes it possible to keep playing from almost anywhere. How do you currently stream content? How much smoother could it be with a faster 4K ready streaming stick? Head to Amazon.com/Fire TV Locked On to get started. Xbox Game Pass Ultimate subscription and compatible controller required. Available on select devices, including Fire TV Stick 4K 2nd Gen, Fire TV Stick 4K Max 1st and 2nd Gen, and Fire TV Cube 3rd Gen. All right, so the evolution of this offense, Elijah Moore in, Josh Palmer in, Mack Hollins out. It appears Amari Cooper is out. He has not landed anywhere yet. Offensive line returns. Everybody else is back. We'll get Brandon Beane on James Cook in a moment. But, guys, as we look for a repeat performance, Brandon Beane this week was very bullish. 30 points a game, 8 games in a row. We scored more points in the season than the Super Bowl champions. A lot of points. Offense isn't the issue. Will there be challenges to keep it up? Or do you think they'll work at it, but is this offense kind of ready-made to pick up right where it left off?
I think that it is. I think it's a team that does a very, very good job of retooling and just getting the right pieces here and there. I think that the main key to this offense is the offensive line, and we know that thing is locked up for at least one more year. They've done a great job there developing talent as starters, 5 across the board. You've got guys behind them that can step in and get you out of games. So that, to me, is the key. Obviously, I think that the tight ends have to kind of elevate their game this year. We know Dawson Knox's situation. He's not getting any younger. All eyes have been upon Kincaid this offseason, getting bigger in the weight room, gaining weight, getting stronger, durability, those types of things. Now you added some pieces at receiver. Really the only thing that could possibly be a hiccup in this offense this season would be, is this James Cook situation lingers on any longer than it absolutely needs to. But I don't think it will. Obviously, he's under contract. Bills have all the leverage. It was pretty evident they feel the same way that we do. That's why they picked all the guys they did on defense in the draft, right? I mean, you didn't need to retool. You just need to add a couple pieces. But, yeah, I think they'll evolve in some things they do, especially with bringing in a guy like Hawes in the draft. that you can do some more things with an H-back and a wing. But, no, they're ready to go, and I'm sure they'll add some wrinkles this year.
Got a lot of thoughts on this. I think there's several factors in play. One encouraging factor is the continuity, whether it's personnel or coaching staff. That wasn't really the case going into last season. And you'd like to think they could build upon a lot of the success that they had with a lot of the same coaches and a lot of the same personnel. And I think that's part one of being encouraged by the possibility of the Bills offense sustaining its high level performance. Number two, I think complementary football will help. And defensively, I don't think they did their job. The defense couldn't get off the field on third downs. You're talking about a bottom 25% of the league third down defense, despite being top 5 in longest yards to go on third downs. They couldn't get off the field. And so if that can get better, which after these investments, both in the draft and free agency, you'd like to think it will, that's going to help the offense sustain its level of performance. Number 3, I think there is the need for development from players, guys like Dalton Kincaid, guys like Keon Coleman, counting on them to take a step, in addition to onboarding guys like Josh Palmer and, of course, now Elijah Moore. How does that all come together? I'm encouraged there because I think there's a lot of reason to be hopeful about Kincaid and Coleman taking that step, and there's a lot to like about the skill sets of Palmer and Moore. Does have to come together. But this is the most important thing about this offense being able to stay at the level that we've come to enjoy and really build on last year. Can they take care of the football like they did last year? And maybe not 8 giveaways all season long, because that's crazy. That's an NFL record. You know, that's pretty unique. But can they still be a team that takes care of the football? And it really is a one-off. Like, the Bills have not been that good at taking care of the football. So I have reason to be a little bit concerned that it can trend that way. We do have, of course, last year to point to, but I've got sample size defensively of them taking away the ball. Year over year, it's good. I don't have that on the offensive side of the football, and I think that's the important layer. That helped them overcome the lack of complementary football last year because the defense wasn't getting off the field. Well, the offense wasn't giving it away and putting the defense in a whole lot of bad spots. I think that's the key, and I don't know exactly how to answer it other than you do have a lot of those elements in place that should continue year over year, but can they take care of the football like they did last year? I think that's critical in this.
Well, we're in your second full year of Joe Brady, and he gets the job away from Ken Dorsey 2 years ago, in part because there's too many turnovers, and Brady kind of pulls the offense back a little bit. They stop turning the ball over. So I almost want to say we have a year and a half of it. Do you feel like just the structure, the design of the offense is one that is possibly, knock on wood, fumbles happen, but maybe more in tune with the team that wants to play turnover-free football? Is it a more safe, might be the word here, conservative might not be the right word, but just is it more properly laid out to protect the football the way Joe Brady plays?
100%. I think structurally that should give us a lot of encouragement, because I think a lot of the turnover issues that the Bills had before 2024, and really that stretch you're talking about, like pre-Joe Brady taking over, they didn't have the commitment to the run game like they do. I think that's important. But also, I'll say it, there's no reason to sit there and be worried about Stephon Diggs getting his 150 targets, right? I think that gives Josh Allen a freedom to operate, run the play, throw the ball to the open guy. You're not worried about 14. You're not worried about if he's mad about not getting his. I also think there's a second part to that, and it's Gabe Davis. There's no longer a need to validate Gabe Davis as this number 2 receiver, which he's never been. And I think those two elements being gone, in addition to the run game, gives Josh Allen a freedom to just run the play, read the coverage, throw the ball to the open guy, do the smart right thing with the football, be dynamic Josh Allen, but also be a little bit more consistent with just the routine stuff that is not going to get you in trouble.
No, I agree 100% about the run game. I think the run game's the biggest factor because it doesn't put you behind the sticks. They weren't behind the sticks like they normally are, to where Josh is feeling the need to make heroic throws. It's 3rd and 15, 3rd and 20. This team was under 3rd and 6 quite a bit. I'd like to know the stat of how many times they had 3rd down where it was 6 or less. And, you can make the shorter underneath throw. So I think the running game, and, me being an offensive line guy, I'm always going to say that. But I really, truly believe the running game fixes and makes a lot of things right. And that's been the biggest factor in this whole turnover situation. We can run the football. And when you can run it, you don't have to put it in harm's way as much as you normally do if you can't.
Well, a breakout star of that run game, James Cook. So we have a new quote from Brandon Beane about James Cook, his potential star running back who's out there looking for some big money. He spoke with Tyler Dunn at golongtd.com, a Q&A, and part of the quote said, everyone wants to get paid, and he knows he's got to still show he's James Cook, the guy we saw, if he wants to get that payday, either from us or someone else. And there's more in there. They'd like to keep Cook, and that everybody in a contract situation like Cook has to prove it. One of the things I would want to watch here is, will the Bills try to make him more of a 3-down back? Is he interested in that? Does he want to become a guy committing his offseason to be more trustworthy in pass protection? Or does he just want to be the specialist home run hitter? Because these guys that get the big money are 3-down backs, and Cook is not really looked at as a 3-down back for this team. So something's got to give, right? Something's got to give on whether it's usage or if they're just going to pay $15 million for a guy that's their home run hitter. He's got to show statistically in the yards and the touchdowns and the big plays. But I wonder how that last part gets bridged, if they'll be convinced to commit to him long-term in that way.
You know, I have a lot of respect for this quote from Brandon Beane, because while James Cook has statistically had 2 fantastic seasons, and of course the touchdown numbers were monstrous in 24, and the volume, like the yardage numbers, were monstrous in 2023. But I think it's a little bit forgotten some of the struggles that he had in 2023, despite there being a lot of yards, whether it was fumbles, drops. Of course, pass pro has kind of been a consistent thing, but how many times did we see James come out of a game and not run behind his pads? I even called him Twinkle Toes James Cook to start games, and they had to put Latavius Murray out there, have him smash in there a few times, and all of a sudden James Cook gets it going. And so I think he corrected almost every one of those issues in 2024, minus the pass pro. And I'm worried about the overall profile as a 5'11", 195 back that just doesn't have a very dense build for, sticking his face in the fan against a blitzing linebacker and being able to hunker down. I just don't know that that's going to be a big part of what he does. But if Brandon Beane is saying, hey, we'd like the player we saw in 2024, show us that again, and we can have the conversation. And that doesn't even get into like the leading thing, which is a true 3-down back that's trusted in 2-minute, that's trusted when you want to close games, and 4-minute to grind it out. Like, I think there's several layers to this conversation, because James is asking for a lot. He's asking for a lot. Okay, well, you want to do it? Be the guy that we saw, build on that, and we can have a more reasonable conversation about that, because I still think there's missing pieces of the resume here to truly validate the price tag that James Cook is looking for.
I agree. I mean, this is physics, and sometimes the physics doesn't work. And whether he's willing or not on pass pro, I'm not sure that he has the body structure to be that physical of a pass protector. But I will say this. There is a person in the city of Buffalo that if I was James Cook, I would be on the phone with, and I would be asking him, hey, can we meet a couple days a week and watch film? And I just want you to pour into me and explain to me about what is important in pass protection, all these different things. And that's number 34, who's in the Hall of Fame, Thurman Thomas. I have never seen a back pass pro like him. That was the best pass protection running back that I've ever played with on any level. Thurman was an absolute hammer in pass protection. He competed. He got after it. He was nasty. I mean, he finished blocks. He would put guys on their back if he could. And if I remember correctly, Thurman wasn't overly big, but he was thick. He was stout. But I'd get on the horn with Thurman if I was him. I mean, what a tremendous resource. Hey, help me out here. Maybe give me some pointers, give me some tips, and work on those things, because I think that's the biggest thing as a pro. You come in and you had the type of year that he had, you still have the weaknesses, and the offseason is to work on those things. And I think if he's serious about this and wants to be considered best in the league or one of the best in the league, you got to work on your weaknesses in the offseason. Hey, make a phone call, man, because 34 was better than anybody I've ever seen, and he's in town.
This time next year will be post-draft, but the offseason next year presents to be very interesting, because in that quote from Beane, either from us or someone else, outside of the franchise tag, it would be an open market conversation. The Bills might just have their number and wait to see. They might not know what the James Cook plan is going to be, because say their number is 13-5, and they think that's fair, and Cook agrees that's fair, and then a number comes in somewhere for 15 and it's over, and then you're off to the draft and looking for somebody else. When it comes to the explosive nature, before we get to our break and into the defensive linemen, Ray Davis, Ty Johnson, the Bills have a lot of talent on their offense. Do you feel a drop-off comes if one of those two guys goes in for Cook? Because running back is viewed as replaceable, but I don't know about Ray Davis getting the same kind of load that James Cook just did and coming out with the same results. And the same is true of Ty Johnson. They're nice players. They have nice roles. But if elevated to the number one spot, do you think the Bills offense would skip a beat? Because I do. I think it would miss a couple of beats.
Yeah, but I don't think you would do that without replenishing the big play nature that James Cook gives you. And so I think I've said this before. I think that the group and the offense benefits from the 50-25-25 split of the workload. And you'd certainly shift that around, but I would like to think that as part of moving on from James Cook, that your replacement plan wouldn't necessarily be the guy that comes in and gets 50% of the snaps, maybe so, but you bring in a guy that can restore those explosive elements, because that'd be the piece that I'd be concerned about the Bills not having.
I think that Ray Davis works, and I think that Ty Johnson works because they're kind of a good changeup to James Cook. Are they necessarily guys that can be featured backs? I don't know. I think Cook runs the zone as good as anybody. He's got a really good patience to him. He understands. He hesitates. He can hop back behind the guard, hop back behind the center. He's got a really good feel for the zone, especially the way the Bills kind of run that almost three-man combo, horizontal displacement kind of zone where they just run tracks, and who comes to them, they take them, and they go about their business. And Cook has a really good feel for that because it takes a little bit of time to set that mesh up. So I don't know if Ray Davis is that guy. I think he works well because he's more of a downhill slasher as opposed to the hot back guy. So when he comes in, you got a different style. I, for one, don't want to see Cook not in Buffalo, by no means. But I'm like Joe, if he isn't here, and I would have to think that Brandon Beane probably lets the market set the price. I don't think he's going to go out there and throw a price out. Basically wait and see what happens. If somebody else comes in with something, if they can match it, not go about it. But you'd have to get kind of maybe that replacement as a pure zone type runner, because Ty Johnson, who's been called the best pass catching running back on the roster, best third down guy. I'm not sure those two can do some of the things that Cook does in that zone run game.
When we return, we got to get into the defense. A big defense-heavy draft. They have a fully stacked deck when it comes to their front seven. How will they mix and match? What pairings will work together? We'll get into that, some of the options the Bills have on the defensive line coming up here on Bill Squad. And today's episode is, of course, in part brought to you by Game Time. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Game Time, you can be a part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket buying. So make the process very simple, fast, easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is very high. So you basically go to the app. Prices on the app go down as the tip-off gets closer. Their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. So if you use Game Time, you're going to get last-minute deals on concerts and sports, comedy, theater, whether it's the NBA, the NHL playoffs, the all-in pricing, which is the best part. All-in pricing means no surprise fees. So the number you see is what you pay. Click that number, and it stays the same. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. All right, so the conversation turns to the defense, gentlemen, and how they can mix and match their defensive line. They've got a lot of new pieces. They had a lot of new pieces coming in with free agency, and now here we are back with the opportunity to see them go and add in the draft. So, Joe, Jerry, when you're looking at this stacked deck, what kind of options can they get out of their new look front seven and front four, for that matter?
I think that they have an immense amount of possibilities. I mean, this is a team where you're going to have to figure out, until Deone Walker gets healthy and available and comfortable, and even when he does, he's not really truly a run plugging nose. until he does, or you get Dwayne Carter up to speed to be the backup to Daquan Jones, you don't really know what you get there. But the thing that I love about this group and these pairings is that we talk about pass stunts, okay? We talk about bringing in TJ Sanders and Ed Oliver at the same time to be able to run stunts. You got Greg Rousseau, Bosa, you got Jackson, okay? Let's not forget about Hoecht. You want to talk about running stunts in the passing game, Hoyt's going to be one of those dudes. And I expect him to do a lot of things. But the thing is, you can also run a ton of run stunts now with these guys. What's to say that you have to play the big physical nose? Let's put Ed and Sanders in there and run stunts as well. You can run stunts on first and second down. So the penetration and the movement up front is going to be great. I think the thing that you now have is a tremendous amount of possibilities of bringing those two. When I say those two, Sanders and Oliver in the game at the same time, you can go to a 3-man front. Now you got Hoyt that can play outside. You've got Rousseau. Think about the length you can bring in the game. You can put Walker over the nose, Rousseau, Jackson, or Bosa, and now all of a sudden you got all these long guys in there to take up space so you can play coverage behind it. So there's a bunch of things they're going to be able to do, and I don't even think they know exactly what they will and won't do when this whole thing starts up. I mean, I think that they'll see how these combinations go, but the speed now and athleticism and the ability to get upfield is immense. And these, you can have quite a few pairings out there that can do a lot of different things, not only in pass stunts, but also run stunts.
So, Jerry, I definitely wanted to pick your brain on this. You kind of got into, the stunt game and different things you can do with all these different skill sets. But I want to really laser in on Ed Oliver and TJ Sanders.
Okay.
Ed Oliver paid, right? Top 10 pick. TJ Sanders, the 41st pick in the draft. And I think there's a lot of questions out there. I know this because I received a ton of them this past week about how that marriage works, because even Brandon Beane kind of said, they're not an ideal pairing. It's not a traditional 1 tech and a 3 tech pairing, but it's not avoidable, right? These guys are part of the mix. They're going to play together.
Right.
So how do the Bills maximize what they bring to the table, and at the same time minimize if you're playing them together and you're still going to do that on early downs as well? How do you avoid maybe some of the concern about having 2 lighter tackles? I know Sanders is 305 pounds. It's crazy to say that that's lighter, but it's not a traditional nose in 3 tech combination.
Well, you're probably going to have to go ahead and get away from shading the center. That's when you put those 2 in there. I mean, really, if you look at Sanders and Oliver and you talk about who's playing nose and who's playing 3 technique, Sanders probably going to play the 3. Ed will probably bump over to play the nose. Now, do you put him in a shade on the center? Do you put him on the inside of the guard? Do you try to protect him by alignment so that he can go ahead and, shoot gaps? One of the things that you see a lot of times is you'll see teams play head up on the guards. So you'll take 2 fast guys and you'll put them head up on the guard so that they have a 2-way go. And then you got your stunt built in to where they can come inside, they can go outside. You don't have predictability by alignment. One of the things that I do like with the Bills is, and I don't really like the center being completely uncovered in Buffalo because Bernard's not a big guy. And so the center has a free climb up to him. That usually, to me, is not great. But one of the things I do like about Bernard's style of play, he's so well-versed and studied up. He makes that front right all the time. He can figure out which gap he needs to get into. So, I think that you're going to have to figure out some constructive ways to kind of protect them from just monstrous double teams and things like that. Some of that is putting them head up on guards and doing things like that.
As you guys start talking about this, I'm thinking about the number of times I've heard how in the run game, teams like to use the Bills' aggressiveness against them. Right. This is the Baltimore game where Henry has that 85-yarder on the first play. And one thing we saw in the draft was they did not go for the big guy. They kind of do what they often do. How much is a coaching staff like this or a team like this willing to accept the occasional hit in the run game for what it brings as a whole, right? Just like Brandon Beane likes to say, you'd love to be good at everything, but what did they build this line primarily to do? Is it to get after the passer and collapse pockets? They want to get to third downs and then win there?
No, I think so. I think that's definitely it. I think you have to look at the style of football as well, okay, offensively. And I'm going to real quick, a little quick history lesson in how this thing works. In the 70s, you had 70s and 80s, you had a bunch of guys like you do now, defensive linemen that were longer, quicker, penetrator type guys. And then because you had everybody running gap scheme. So then Mouse McNally and those guys come in and they get the zone blocking. The Cowboys come out with offensive line that's 350 across the board, and they get hip to hip, and they look like elephants walking in the circus, right? And they take all those gaps away, and they just wash these light guys out of the way, and you get huge runs. So then what does the defense do? They match size for size on the inside. Now we're going to hold up both guards in the center, and we'll take a guy like Zach Thomas and put him behind 2 360-pound guys, and he'll make 35 tackles a game because none of these guys on the inside can get to him, right? And then he goes to the Hall of Fame. Well, with the spread that has become prevalent in football, you now have, more receivers, less guys in the box to block. So what do? We go back to more of the gap scheme stuff. So you've got defensive linemen that are penetrators and get upfield. So I think that's where a lot of this comes from. You've got penetrating linemen, guys get upfield because penetration kills gap scheme.
I knew the right move was to get out of the way and let Jerry talk there. So
please ask me more because sometimes I feel like I say too much and I'm not being pointed enough.
No, I think your insight's been tremendous. And the more that you talked and I start to just piece this together in my mind, I do wonder if Michael Hoecht is truly the glue piece of this newly formed. And you mentioned kind of some 3-man fronts. What about 50 fronts where you walk him down on the strong side and you play kind of a 5-2 with your 2 stack backers? Will the Bills do that? Will they really just play 4 DBs? I hope so, because I think they have the personnel that creates a very exciting menu for how multiple they can be with these fronts.
So
right,
50 front, meaning 5 linemen, no linebackers, is what you're saying.
No, you got the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Okay.
The Pittsburgh.
You'd have basically a regular four down lineman. Think of Michael Hoecht walk down as kind of a rush linebacker that would play to the strength of the formation. You still have 2 linebackers behind it, but you're loading up on the front. So it's kind of like a 5-2 alignment would be kind of how that would go.
And I think you're right. To me, Hoyt's the piece that when we talked about when they played the Ravens and they didn't have the scheme to play against that power run, now you bring Hoecht in and all of a sudden, hey, you're a lot more right. So I think that's true. I think that he is definitely that guy that can come in and solidify some things. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait 6 weeks to get him.
This Bills' new defensive front. Rush packages, who's getting to the cornerback? How are they mixing all that together? And Landon Jackson, how's he fit in? We've talked a lot about Sanders, but Landon Jackson and, of course, Deone Walker, like these 2 new guys, how they could be paired. Who are their best pairs when it comes to defensive line? Who could they be next to and flourish next to?
I think, and I'm gonna bring something up that I talked about the other night, and people think I'm absolutely nuts, but so be it. I mean, it's not the first time. I don't understand why we do not use Greg Rousseau down over a guard more in 3rd down. I don't get that.
Literally
I don't
never
understand it.
Yeah. He did it in college all the time, right?
I don't understand this. And with the guys we have now, think about this. Jackson develops as a pass rusher. You've got Bosa, who we know can rush the passer. And now you bring in a Greg Rousseau, put him over the guard, all that length, and then you have options at the other guard. It's just endless to me. I don't know why we do not play Rousseau over the 3 as much. We never have, and I don't know why we don't.
So can I ask you guys something about this? Because Jerry, you could speak to this, and this is where for guys like scouting and Joe breaking down arm length, this is a big part of arm length, right? Rousseau and his length against guards. Guards tend to be shorter armed than tackles. This also calls in the clips you'll see of Landon Jackson beating Will Campbell. People have been watching that, right? The Bills' 3rd-round pick goes head-to-head against the Patriots' 4th overall pick, and I think I forget who it was showing clips, but that's length. That's where Campbell was thought to have arms that are a little short for tackle. Am I getting all this kind of pieced together right, that this is how, in fact, Rousseau would win on the inside and why arm length matters in those kind of spots?
Yes, I think it's not only just arm length, it's overall body length in general. It's really hard to get into a long defensive tackle as if you're a guard. I used to have fits playing against Leon Lett because Leon Lett was this before it was popular. Leon was in a world of zone type of defensive tackles where you had these big dudes that took up space, and all of a sudden Leon Lett shows up and he's got all this length, and it's just like I prided myself on getting my hands on people early, and I come out of my stance and his hands are on me before I even get to him. And now you're doing that stay away from me thing, running down the line of scrimmage. It's difficult. I mean, length is hard to deal with, and that's what's so, that's why when you evaluate Walker, if he can learn, he's a long guy, but doesn't use it a lot of times. He wants to be tight. And so if he could ever learn to get healthy and learn to use his length, it would make him much better as well. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Beane wants those types of guys. I agree. They're tough to defend. Now we've got a stable of them. It will be interesting to see how we use them. And I think those possibilities are endless. You're going to be able to hop in and out a lot of stuff. And I personally like 3-man stuff as well. And I think you'll see some of that in passing downs also.
All right. It's the good stuff. It's where the
measurable. Anything else?
I just say I just think for the people, for fans that watch and watch the combine and they think how much does length matter, and this gets into how the measurables in a dome in Indianapolis matter on a Sunday in New England, basically.
Right, exactly. It's football that's the thing I love about football. It's ever evolving, and it's an amazing thing that you can take a lot of different body styles and make them do all the same things somehow, some way. And I, that's what's going to be fun to watch this campus to see how that evolves.
Of course, the Bills, one of 32 teams to get draft classes. We're going to check in quickly on the division, see what they did, who's in the rearview mirror, the closest, who had a great draft, if anyone. Just mentioned the Patriots and their 4th overall pick, what they did there, adding to the offensive line. So we'll get to that. Bills Squad continues here on the Locked On Bills channel. Again, nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game or NHL playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment. It's great to be a part of it. And with Game Time, you can get discounted tickets up to 60% off because you're saving money, electricity in the arena, and savings in your pocket. Fast and easy to get playoff tickets, and when demand is sky high, prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer or face-off. And their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. So use Game Time and get last-minute deals. It's easy. The best part about Game Time is the all-in pricing. Nothing's worse than clicking on a ticket to buy it. You go in, and then there's all these fees. Game Time is all-in pricing. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, you create an account with the app and redeem the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase with Game Time. Download the app and get yourself to the game. Final segment here of Bills Squad. We're here live on YouTube. Jeremy White, Joe Marino, Jerry Ostrowski. The draft, the Bills draft is pretty universally appreciated. Saw lots of A+ grades, lots of high reviews for what they got, and needs fulfilled. How about the other 3 teams in the division, guys? Did you like anybody more than anybody else? Miami kind of went away from their finesse style and got a little bit rugged. And the Patriots, it looked like they're really all about helping out Drake May. The Jets, it almost feels like they're kind of starting over there in New York, and Justin Fields is a placeholder. So what jumped out at you about the other 3 teams in the division, and who would you be picking to be the first team up in the rearview mirror for the Bills?
I thought all the teams in the AFC East did a really good job with their drafts, and I particularly like what the Patriots did. I thought they've had a good offseason, which we expected. They had the most cap space. They had a ton of draft capital. We knew that they would add to this roster, and after free agency, they really helped their defense in a lot of ways. In that front in particular, they got a running mate for Christian Gonzalez and Carlton Davis at corner. Like, that defense is looking strong, and of course, Mike Vrabel, we know, is going to coach them up right, but on the offensive side of the football, I thought they did a really good job of getting veterans like a Morgan Moses at right tackle, Steph Diggs, Mack Hollins, to go with a young nucleus. Of course, Drake May, I think we're all pretty impressed with what he did, all things considered, with a really bad supporting cast and, not really the greatest offensive minds there, kind of leading him in his rookie season. But they come into this draft, and I thought they needed to continue to add to their offensive line and continue to add to their skill players on offense. And they get, in their first 4 picks, of course, Will Campbell, top offensive lineman in the draft at number 4 overall. And then in the 3rd round, they get Jared Wilson, a center out of Georgia, who's a high ceiling player that, I think there's no rush to play him right away, but they have a really intriguing guy that can elevate the ceiling of that offensive line. And then they add Travion Henderson and Kyle Williams, a running back, Travion Henderson out of Ohio State, Kyle Williams, a receiver from Washington State. That gives them more speed and explosiveness to their offense. And so I think they've done a good job of kind of coupling together some good veterans, but also young players. I don't love the idea of getting like a bunch of developing players around a developing quarterback, but I think they have a good foil here with the contrast that they've been able to create in free agency in the draft. And then you get deeper into it. Josh Farmer, a player in the 4th round, a D tackle that I really like. Braden Swinson, edge rusher out of LSU that could have went 2 rounds earlier and nobody would have been surprised. So I think New England crushed it. I hate to say it, but I thought they did an excellent job.
No, I agree. I thought New England did a wonderful job in this draft, and I think if you watched it and this way that Vrabel's building this football team, it's following the Belichick model, right? It's following what he knows. All these draft picks have a story. They're all kind of hardened guys. I mean, if you dig into Farmer's story and how he was brought up, and the fact he was a big baseball guy before he played football, and his life story it's really interesting. And Williams, from all these guys have stories. They're all kind of gym rat kind of guys, dudes that love to play ball. Then they do the other thing that Belichick, I thought, did better than anybody else in the league for a long, long time. He was able to bring in older vets and tell them, like, look, I don't need you to do all this. I just need you to do these 2 things really well. And he would use those guys for a while, then move them out and bring the next guy in to do those things. I mean, he managed vets at the end of their career as good as anybody, and you see that going on as well. So very Patriot-like players have been picked. They got their left tackle. They got their Bruce Armstrong. They got the guys that, they can hang their hat on, and it'll be interesting to see how that thing continues. I think the Jets and the Dolphins did fine. Of course, the Dolphins trying to get bigger on the defensive front, trying to get bigger on the offensive line, trying to do those things, get away from being a finesse team. And like Joe said, kind of be a bully. The other thing is the Jets, and the thing that's interesting about them, and I really appreciate what their head coach had to say, and the fact that, look, man, I don't care who we draft. I don't care who's in the building. We got to fix this culture first. The culture from top to bottom in this building has to be fixed. That's ownership. That's admin. That's all the way down to the guys that are doing equipment and handling the locker room on a daily basis. Culture has to be right first before we worry about anything else. So I thought that was interesting as well. So definitely AFC East teams got better, but so did we. So yeah. I think the competition's coming. And we'll be ready for it because Brandon Beane and company did just as good of a job as the rest of them.
So the number one person that is, I don't want to say a threat yet, you guys decide, the number one figure that determines if the Bills have a challenger in the next few years, it's May 1st. I've seen a lot of Drake May memes, right? So coming out of college, what did you think? And how did year 1 go for Drake May in your eyes? I came away really impressed. And I feel like Bills fans probably hear a lot of Josh Allen comparisons because everyone wants to believe their young quarterback is developing. I liked the comparisons just because I feel like he's a callback to a young Allen. There's athleticism there and the way that he plays, and he's not afraid to rip the ball like Allen was. So on that comparison, again, which not to where Allen is at the MVP level, but just how high should Patriots fans be on May, and how worthy is he of this build-out that they're giving him?
They should be excited. You could see the tools. That was easy to identify in his tape at North Carolina, and I thought it was really significant for him to have the offensive coordinator change between his second and third year at North Carolina, where they got more into a pro-style stuff where, North Carolina has been putting out these quarterbacks, but they don't really do anything that the NFL does. And so I thought it was Chip Lindsey coming in and being the OC. I thought that was a good move to set him up entering the NFL. And one thing that I always loved about Drake May at North Carolina is you could say there was some inconsistency, but in big moments like third downs, the dude figured it out. Like whatever it took, he figured it out, like clutch throws, willing to put it on the line. And that is Josh Allen like. And then you get to the NFL, and what a goofy situation. I thought Gerard Mayo was really goofy, really from the first time he spoke as the Patriots head coach. And then there was like congruency issues with what he said and then what actually happened. Like you could tell things were not heading in a good direction. And I give their Bob Kraft, the owner, a lot of credit for being able to move away, because if you listen to the introductory press conference with Gerard Mayo, he was very high on the hire and said, even likened it to a story with Bill Belichick where he said, he had a chance to hire Bill Belichick earlier than he did. And he like really regretted that he didn't do it and waited a little bit too long. And he's like, I feel the same way about Gerard Mayo. To be able to pivot in a year, that's tough. That's a tough thing to do. And I give him credit for doing that. Maybe Mike Vrabel's availability gave him some courage to do it. But I think ultimately that entire situation year one, whether it was Gerard Mayo, Alex Van Pelt, offensive line, like an unserious offensive line, those tackles couldn't go. I didn't have any receivers. And for him to, through that, show the highs, it's pretty impressive. Not unlike Josh Allen in his rookie season where you're like, this isn't very good around him, but that guy's doing things that are intriguing. And I'm impressed. And I think the infrastructure and ecosystem around him are so much better. And so, yeah, Drake May, that's the guy that I think the Bills got to be thinking most about warding off here for this AFC East.
No, I agree, and I think that New England has done exactly what Buffalo's done. I mean, they've built an offensive, they're building an offensive line, they're giving him a running game, and they're giving him support to where he doesn't have to do everything. Probably the one difference between his situation and Josh's is, at least right now anyway, our defense still isn't quite up to speed. One thing I thought New England's done pretty good over the last couple of years is play defense. So he's got that going for him. So, no, I think that they're definitely going to be a contender. Drake May is a really, really good player. But also to kind of piggyback on that question, to me anyway, the biggest threat to the Bills is the Bills themselves. I think this football team is really good. And even with Drake May's ascension as far as a great young quarterback, Aaron Glenn and what he's going to do with the Jets, Miami, all that stuff, it's still, to me, what happens in that division is going to be up to the guys in Orchard Park. I mean, they need to take care of business, and they're their own contender if they can bring it again like they have over the last few years, because it's hard year in and year out to come in and constantly play hot and play at that high level. I expect the Bills to. I expect them to be much better on defense. I expect them to pick up where they left off last season.
Well, one thing to always point out here, could the Patriots catch the Bills? People won't pick that. I wouldn't say it's likely, but the Bills play a first-place schedule, and the Patriots play a last-place schedule. And let me give you the three differences in schedules, and then, could New England keep it a race if they had a big step forward for May? The Bills, 3 games that New England will not have. It's Philadelphia, Kansas City, and Houston. Okay? Remember those 3. The 3 opponents that the Patriots have instead of those 3, the Giants, the Titans, and the Raiders. And that is a pretty big there's first and last place, and then there's, the Super Bowl teams and the Giants and the Titans. So pretty big difference in the caliber of opponent in those 3 games.
I think the good news is that the Patriots have to play the Bills.
That's right. That's right.
That's where I'd find some comfort. But obviously, yeah, it's a tougher path. And I still think I'm not predicting the Patriots to take down the Bills this year.
No.
But I think what they still have to do is still has to come together, right? Like it's still year one of Mike Vrabel. There's a lot of coming together that has to happen. They're a team that I could see finishing with a 5-2 run down the stretch, and they're everyone's hot name for 2026. But how quickly it can come together is huge. And obviously, you feel like the Bills are positioned well to hit the ground running, which will help. If you can keep the heat on, that's going to matter a ton.
One thing about the next couple of weeks, the schedule comes out in less than 2 weeks. And I mean, I'd like to raise my hand and say, let's not wait until week 16 to play New England. Last year, it was 2 of the last 3 games. It's kind of brutal. So that might be a factor as well. Do they catch as they're trying to come together? Is it Bills New England in week 3? Because that's big time advantage Bills, you would think.
Definitely. I hate when they do that. You play 2 teams in 3-4 weeks at the end of the season. But no, I'd like to see him earlier. And the other thing I want to talk about too is, Vrabel gets a lot of accolades, but Vrabel did get fired in Tennessee. He is on his second job. And while he brings a lot of the Belichick-like traits or whatever, sometimes I wonder in today's football, is that still a viable option as far as a head coach? He's going to bring that edge, that hammer that Bill had, and everything else. I don't know. I mean, the jury's still out on Vrabel. It's great on paper. He does a great sounder, and he's awesome in an interview. But sustained success is still something that he hasn't quite had yet. So let's not just praise him as Belichick light, and all of a sudden they're going to be back in the Super Bowl. I mean, it's going to take a little bit.
All right. Well, gentlemen, it's been a pleasure once again. Who knows what will happen the next couple of days? I mean, this was a busier week than maybe we thought it was going to be with all the stuff post-draft, but it was an enjoyable one nonetheless. And Elijah Moore, got an idea for a number for him to wear? Not that many available. Go the Matthew Golden route, wear number 22, get to one of the weird numbers. I mean,
I'm a big numbers guy, so when I saw Matthew Golden pick 22, I felt some type of way about that. We'd love to get a single digit, but I don't know that the Bills have a single digit available.
No, I don't think so.
So these guys are not wearing 80s numbers. That's just not going to happen. So
13, I think, is one that's available. The old Stevie Johnson, Gabe Davis number. It's a good number in Bills receiver history. It's been all right.
You can see it for sure.
You can see it. 81's also available. All right. That'll do it for us. Thanks, gentlemen. We'll talk on Monday. This is Bills Squad, and we're back Monday live on YouTube. Of course, you can like and subscribe on the YouTube page, and, of course, subscribe to the Locked On Bills podcast and join us there because Joe's cranking out the content all the time, every day, and we're up twice a week. Till next time, go Bills.
Go Bills.
Much love. Go Bills.